I've called you all here today because I want to tell you about my experience with Baldur's Gate 3, but to do that in classic video essay format, I need to tell you a different story first. Before Baldur's Gate 3, Larian Studios developed and published a game called Divinity Original Sin. You'd probably recognize bits of it, but personally I never played it, and low-key I'm going to bet you haven't either. What you might have played was the sequel, Divinity Original Sin 2, Electric Boogaloo. Divinity Original Sin 2 came out in 2017 and is notable for having people actually play it, and I was one of those people. I beat the game with a party of friends, and then we restarted to take a crack at it on the hardest difficulty. For a while, our Friday night plans every Friday, every week, was to play Divinity Original Sin 2. All in all, I've spent almost 100 hours in that game, and I kind of, didn't really enjoy it at all. It is genuinely one of my least preferred games of all time, beaten out only by Viva Pinata 2, and no, I will not be telling you that story. And I know that might be a weird surprise to hear from me, because I've kind of built my channel identity around the media and stories that I love, and we'll get there with this one, but I really do feel the need to drive home Divinity Original Sin 2 was absolutely not for me. And I know that I'm kind of the weird one for that. Like, the game has a 95% positive review on Steam. People tend to like it. Now, I could write a whole essay on why I personally didn't connect with Divinity Original Sin 2, but all you really need to know is that I didn't like it. But what I do like a lot, like a whole bunch, is Dungeons & Dragons. Now, this isn't some story where I tell you all about how I played chainmail back in the day. I literally never touched D&D in any form until 5th edition. In fact, I fall into that weird category of TTRPG players where I played way more niche things like Dark Heresy and Black Crusade from the Warhammer 40k setting, and even a little bit of Shadowrun, which I genuinely don't think I ever even understood the basics of way before I tried out D&D proper. But when I did finally get my hands on 5th edition, holy shit, I basically went feral. I had a period of my life where I genuinely fell asleep every night reading the player's handbook because I couldn't stop thinking about D&D. I'd spend hours theory crafting different builds and weird multiclasses and how to recreate popular characters in the D&D medium. And since then, I've written my own homebrew campaigns, I've played in loads more, and I've even written my own standalone system. I love Dungeons & Dragons a lot, okay? So, when my friend asked if I'd be playing Baldur's Gate 3, the third installation in a game series I'd never heard of before, and a game made and published by the same creative minds behind Divinity Original Sin 2, but with a D&D skin on it, I was not impressed, nor was I excited for this company to run something I love through the mud. But I was at least attempting to be a good friend, so I bought Baldur's Gate 3 and we played it a bit. I think our first session was around 10 hours and I didn't even notice. So despite my initial concerns, it turns out I love this game a lot, and now I just want to talk about it for a while. And I think the best place to start is with the game's strongest element, because even the poorest written character in Baldur's Gate 3 still deserves accolades for being such an incredible display of writing. And I think that has so much to do with the fact that they're done so well from every conceivable angle that it genuinely confuses me. I'm going to throw down hard that Karlach is basically the best character ever written, designed, voice acted, you name it. She's best in show in wild golden retriever energy. And every other character is basically just as good, to the point where I can look at Shadowheart and get full-on jump-scared by the realization that she has a voice actor, that she's not actually her own, real person. All of these characters are just bursting with so much quality and attention to detail in every aspect of their design. Even this nasty little pervert who I genuinely killed my first time seeing this cutscene because I thought a villain had infiltrated my camp, only to be told later by every person on the internet that I'd ever had a Twilight or Vampire Diaries phase, that I'd maybe just picked a whole bouquet of oopsie daisies, is such a great fucking character. Seriously, drop the temple on him, it's great. Listen to his voice actor pretend to be a goose. Gold medal, best in show. And at the risk of wading into the treacherous waters of the Horny River, I think a huge part of what makes these characters feel so full of life is that you can fuck literally all of them. I mean, not at the same time? At least, I don't think so. I mean, that cutscene would be all over the internet. What I'm trying to say is that each of these characters is ready to present you with a meaningful relationship of some sort if you're willing to speak their language. which gives this cool side effect that even if you don't pursue a romantic relationship, because you do not have to pursue a romantic relationship, these characters still need to be able to engage with you in meaningful ways. And that means that each of these characters needs to be well developed and fully fleshed out. And they did it! In that really, really well done way that's so good you don't realize how much effort must have gone into it. Like, why don't all games just have masterful writing and deep characters and incredible vocal talent to bring it all together? It's maybe because these characters don't just exist to round out your party, each of these characters also have their own entirely unique stories. Like all great D&D stories, there is the story of the big bad, but also the story of each character at the table, so to say, and how they all interact with each other and with the larger story as a whole. And when you consider how much life the vocal talent have breathed into each character, does it surprise anyone that there's literally no bad companions? And speaking of the vocal talent, you know how you can swap a character's class with Withers at any time? That means that, say, Shadowheart could be a bard, or anyone could be a bard, or a barbarian, and all of this means that the whole cast of vocal talent had to have entire sessions of just calling people cucks in case someone gives Shadowheart a makeover to have vicious mockery, or entire days of yelling and screaming because literally no man, king, or god could stop you from making Asterion a barbarian, and that needs to be vocally represented. And this sort of thing gives the game such a massive feel of renowned polish. It's like the scene from Jurassic Park where Hammond talks about how they spared no expense, but Larian Studios actually committed to sparing no expense. Which is why I think this game has had such a grassroots-style community built around it. I didn't learn about Baldur's Gate 3 from streamers or ads or sponsored videos, I learned about it from my friend. And I slowly, more and more, have gotten drawn into what I now understand has been this little community for a number of years now. Like, that Gustarian joke I made, that clip was from 2 years ago. 2 years! Gustarian was a thing for 2 years. I wasted my life at a job I hated and went to college for things I didn't care about, and Gustarian was right there the whole time? But it's okay, because the videos of the narrator desperately trying to pronounce all of the goofy, silly, dumb words from D&D only came out a few weeks ago, and it gives me the same kind of uplifting joy that Gustarian does, without making me feel like I missed out on the most important thing in the world for 2 years. And it feels like the whole world has come together in this moment to just love this thing that deserves it. My YouTube algorithm has been irreversibly affected by the release of this game, all the way from the world-class gold star shitposting to some of the best renditions and indie covers of music from the game from artists that I know would never have been able to resist the music Baldur's Gate 3 brings to the table. And as I'm writing the script right now on a Monday at noon, there are still 275,000 people in-game. And that only sounds incredible until I show you this screenshot I took of 414,000 in-game on a Friday night. Baldur's Gate 3 has been consistently sitting at the 3rd spot on Steam's most played, which is basically number 1 when you consider the absolutely addictive stranglehold that CSGO and Dota 2 maintain on their player base, preventing them from doing literally anything else. And while all of this stuff is great, and I love all of it, I think the thing for me that really did it was just seeing that D&D vibe really put through and integrated so well into this game. One of the things that kept me from fully involving myself with Divinity 2 was its world. Like Baldur's Gate 3, it was a world in turmoil, but it felt like a world that had already given in to that turmoil. Terrible beasts from the void are breaking through the barrier between realms, and the game really sells the idea that only you can save the world, but it also really drives home, I feel, that there's almost no point. The game goes so hard on the nature of the world being sundered that, to me, I can't see any value in saving the world, because it feels like the world has already given in to being lost. The standout moment from Divinity Original Sin 2 that has stood with me despite my best attempts to fade those 100 hours from my mind is when my party came across a small seaside village. There's a small outcropping on a beach where 2 kids stand together. If you talk with them, you'll learn that while they were playing in the water, a shark attacked and ate one of their friends, and now they exist in stunned and pained silence. You can actually find this shark, though, on a sandbar nearby because it's purposely beached itself. You can't help the kid in any way, he's already long dead, his body in multiple pieces, but with the proper application of magic, you can speak with the shark. And the shark will tell you that it beached itself, condemned itself to death because of the terror of the horrible void beast that was hunting it in the waters just off the beach. It's the game telling you that even the greatest predators are just victims in this world. And it wasn't just this one moment that inspired this feeling, it's a game totally drenched in helplessness. And maybe I was supposed to feel convicted seeing a world in such turmoil, but in reality, I just felt sad. I disliked every moment I spent in this world because I felt like the game wanted me to be sad. It drove home the idea of the world as not worth saving because there's already so much lost that there wouldn't be anything left by the time my actions had influence. But when you put a D&D skin on that kind of world design, you get something with levity. Because D&D is, at its core, really rather goofy. Don't get me wrong, D&D and TTRPGs in general are really good for exploring a whole bunch of different themes and genres, and a pretty common theme is growing a group of adventurers with your friends to combat some kind of world-threatening darkness or bad guy. But one of the big themes that essentially feels unavoidable at any healthy D&D table is that sense of levity, greeting darkness with both urgency and comedy. The notion that just because things in this world are bad and are at genuine risk of getting worse doesn't mean we can't also sneak in some fun just for us. And in Baldur's Gate 3, I feel that that sense of fun largely tunnels back to how well written the companions you'll meet along the way are. Like, I can just show you this photo of Karlach and trick your brain into dumping entire vats of serotonin into your bloodstream. I know I can, don't even try to pretend. And these characters being so well written and so fully developed as their own independent entities means that the game hits this perfect balance between recognizing the fragile state of a world at risk and really feeling like you have the agency to affect it in a positive way because you've surrounded yourself with people who also care, are capable of helping, and want to help. And sure, some of them might be a little more self-serving in their interests, but sometimes doing the right thing for the wrong reason is still the right thing. Also, you can pet the dog. And you can pet the owlbear. I don't know where I'm supposed to try and fit those things into the script, but I consider them hyper important. And all of these things combine to really give this game that incredibly special kind of replayability. Kind of like Skyrim, where I always think maybe I'll try something different, but I know in my heart of hearts I'm just going to play a stealth archer for the 15th time. Except for me, I know that this game's version of the stealth archer is playing a punch-em-up monk and either giving the world to this goth GF or helping her end it, literally whatever she feels like doing today. And I don't even need to restart if I decide I don't want to be a punch-em-up monk anymore, because in between hitting you with repeating rounds of vicious no maidens, not a question, just a statement of fact, Withers will let you respec your whole-ass character for just 100 gold, which is basically free. Seriously, in one of my group playthroughs, I entered Act 3 with 2200 gold, and I didn't even try to make money. In the span of like a week and a half, I made the equivalent of 14 years of minimum wage in Baldur's Gate, and I was the poorest one in my party. When Veth Bernardo from Critical Role tells her husband that chemistry pays well, but killing pays best, she was just entirely correct. Fantasy capitalism had told me I could have some hedonism as a treat, and I'd been drinking deep without even trying. And so as we get to the end of the video, you might be wondering if I'm going to talk about the ending of the game. I haven't beaten it yet. Which is kind of nuts to me, because I fell in love with Cyberpunk 2077, beat it multiple times, and made a whole video about that game after just 50 hours. But here I am, with basically a whole additional day spent in the world of Baldur's Gate 3, and I don't think I'm even all that close, really. And I love that I'm okay with that this game can both demand so much of my time, but also be totally worth my time. I think it's hilarious how other studios like Blizzard have made statements to their audiences that they shouldn't expect this level of quality from the games they make, which is both super embarrassing, but also, props for knowing your place, Blizzard. Get back to ruining Overwatch. Anyways, I have to go play Phantom Liberty now, because it just dropped and I've started foaming at the mouth because I thought about the monowire sound too much. I'm going to be ripping through that DLC pretty fast because I'm obsessed with Cyberpunk, but I also want to get a video on it out as soon as I can. Thankfully, I have the best coffee money can buy from my local Kroger's thanks to my incredible backers over on Patreon. If you want to help drip pure caffeine directly into my veins so I can binge my favorite games for the purpose of making more of these videos, then I'll make sure you get access to these videos early and ad-free. But best of all, you can sleep soundly every night, swaddled in the warm blanket of satisfaction that is knowing that you're directly helping support the content you love. If that sounds like a good deal, then consider popping over to my Patreon page and seeing if there's a tier that works for you. Thank you.